Soul cakes. What are soul cakes? I connect them with alms or giving to the poor during the holiday season. This soul cake, goes back to Druid times, pre-Christian Britain. When Christianity enters Britain, it turns into a series of celebrations during what we consider Halloween now. All Hallows Day, All Saints Day, and All Souls Day. It starts out being a way to release a soul from purgatory so that it can enter heaven. If you give a cake to the poor, a beggar at your door during this time period, they promise to pray for that beloved soul that may be in purgatory, and it was thought that each soul cake that was consumed released a soul from purgatory and let them enter heaven.
We're in the kitchen today with our special friend and guest, Michael Dragoo, and he has brought an interesting holiday-related recipe called soul cakes. It's one I have never heard of before. So, Michael, tell me a little bit about soul cakes?
Sure, I didn't know much about them either. We sing it in certain holiday song, but I didn't know what it was, and it goes back to Druid, to pre-Christian Britain and Ireland, and it's an opportunity for people who have wealth to give to the poor. It's happening when what we consider Halloween, but there were Christian holidays, Druid celebrations that turn into Christian holidays during the same time period.
So do we know what the early recipes were like, or what are you basing this recipe on?
I've got 60 or 62 period correct reproduction cookbooks, and I couldn't find a reference to them. And sometimes it's because it's so archaic, but sometimes it's so common. Why would you have a recipe? Because most of these books are talking about special ways of preparing something.
Sure.
This might have been so mundane that it wasn't thought to be put in a cookbook. But in essence, it's a pound cake. Pound of flour, pound of sugar, pound of butter.
Right. That shows up in a lot of different English cookery, American cookery in the early 18th century. So very, very simple. No leavening. It's just a sort of
it's nope. But they do special things to it. Sometimes it's a little extra sugar. Sometimes it's dried fruits. I don't care for raisins, so I brought blueberries and cranberries today. So,
and you put those in a particular design, so you know what's going on.
Thank you. The cookie is crossed. It's cut or pressed, indented with the sign of the cross, and then that can just be as it is, or you can make it a little more special by highlighting that cross with the dried fruits, and that's what I've chosen to do today. The recipe I've chosen today is fairly simple. It includes 3/4 cups of butter, 3/4 cups of sugar, 1.5 cups of flour, 3 egg yolks, 2 teaspoons of mixed spices. We've got some dried fruit of some type, 1/2 cup of milk, and then for making it pretty, we've either using coarse granulated sugar or some powdered sugar, and that's it. Well, first we're just going to incorporate the sugar and the butter together and get that combined as best we can. Then we're going to add the 3 egg yolks that will aid in this mixing process. Once that's thoroughly combined, then we're going to add some flour. When it gets a little thick, we're going to add a little milk and just keep going back and forth until we're done with our 1.5 cups of flour. We want to sneak up on the milk so we don't get too moist mixed here. We're looking for just what your regular cookie dough consistency would be today. All right, John, if you could start adding some flour to this. Go a little more. Thank you. Yes, sir, if you could put a little milk in. We're just sneaking up on this. I don't want to put too much liquid in at first, even though I set an amount. Every single time it's a little different. So we're going to use all of our flour, the 1.5 cups of flour, and then we're going to use as much milk as we need, remembering that we've already got 3 egg yolks in here.
So you ended up with this recipe. Where did it come from?
You know, I couldn't find one static, consistent recipe. These several people, I had 4 or 5 from England, stating that these were following along the lines of original recipes, and I kind of combined them. They all were very similar in the basic pound cake treatment.
Right. This reminds me of the Jumbles recipe from the 17th
Yeah,
century
yeah.
That you'll find. And it's sort of also related to a specific kind of the same recipe, but they make it in a different form.
Right.
Even the little antlers recipe that we did a couple
With
years ago
ivy,
for Christmas,
yep.
that one's the same thing, but instead of baking it, you cook it in hot oil.
Yes. No, this is
Very similar.
very similar. The
Similar, yeah.
thicknesses were very similar, although I found some references to what we would consider to be little cakes, things that were maybe 4 or 5 inches, but they're still
Right.
very dense. There's no
Sure. No
leavening
leavening.
at all. No, sir. Can you add a little more milk?
Sure.
What I found, I was hoping for some golden egg that had everything that was right 1,000 years ago, and I found no such thing. I almost think that, so many of our recipe books that we draw from 1600s, 1700s into early 1800s are making an ordinary dish special, or just doing special, something out of the blue that's just nutty and crazy and that you never would have thought to do yourself. I almost think that this is so mundane, so everyday and average that there was no reason to put it in print. And just, in the 17 and 18 and 1900s, and then today, it just fell out of favor. There were lots of times to give to the poor, not just one time a year. It just stops being connected with saving souls, as one might say. I know that I read that there are some places in the world, perhaps in the Philippines, some counties in England that still practice the symbolism.
So far, we don't have any spices in this.
That's true, and we're about to add the spices. I was talking to your guys a couple days ago, and then again this morning, and they have said how nice you've been lately. And that's not up to me to decide how rare that might be, but I thought, well, if maybe you should get a gift for being nice. And
Really?
it is the holidays, so if you'd open that,
Well,
please.
let's find out what's in here. It's very nicely wrapped.
It is, yes. It was last minute wrapped, and
Well, let's see. Wait for
what
it.
is it?
Yeah.
This is the
this
only
is what I
time-
always wanted.
I know that, and I need about half of that in there. So
Okay.
go to it.
Where's the grater?
I don't know. For the first time ever, he doesn't have
They turned out beautiful.
They turned out beautiful.
They look great.
Yep.
They smell great. If you were here, you would
Yeah.
like this because they're right. These are right
Yep.
out of the oven. So they look good, and we sprinkled that nice powdered sugar on them. We call it powdered sugar today. They had the same kind of thing. They would call it searsed sugar, where they would grind it up, make it finer for fancy sort of things like this, or make it look neat. We baked these at around 375. Start looking at them around 15 minutes, and they'll start to get a brown edge at 17 or 18 minutes, and out they come. Let's give them a try.
Go to it.
I'm gonna try one of these. I love these dried blueberries, and these are unleavened, other than this butter and sugar thing. And oh, nice and soft and puffed up. They're perfect. They might as well be leavened, even though they don't have any special leavening agent. Very good. So good.
You can make them just as special as you want. Extra sugar. In many cases, they asked for dried fruit. I don't prefer raisins, so I had cranberries at home. I had cherries and blueberries. We used cherries and blueberries for this, plus we made some without. And these are wonderful.
Texture is perfect.
Yeah.
It has that nutmeg in it, which you got to have that. And that gives it, again, we expect that for a holiday seasoning, right?
Yeah.
So, and it does come right up to the top.
Yeah.
It's really
You would
good.
ask if the recipe included allspice. There's no reason why it couldn't. This one didn't.
Right.
But there's no reason why you couldn't.
Right. But it's that same
holiday
combination of
cinnamon,
holiday
nutmeg
spices.
for sure. Yeah.
Right.
Cloves. This has some cloves in it.
So good. I could eat
incredible.
these all day long.
We will eat these all day long.
Michael, thank you so much for bringing this recipe in. A great
Certainly.
holiday recipe, wonderful, easy to do, and has a rich history. It goes way back. And speaking of that, your cookbook that's out, talk about rich history. Lots of rich history, connection with our personal histories and how we look that up, and filled with recipes
important.
from the 18th century. So make sure to check out Michael's new cookbook. You'll find a link down in the description section. Excellent. I want to thank you for coming along as we savor the flavors and the aromas of the 18th century, and Merry Christmas.